Assalamu alaikum, dear students, and a very good afternoon to you all. This is Dr. Muhammad Shafiq, Assistant Professor of Philosophy, and we are going through different schools of thought in literary criticism. Today, we are going to talk about feminism or feminism as a literary theory. Today, we are looking at feminism as a literary theory, and I want to start with a crucial point, and this is not about hating men. I mean, general perception about feminism is that it's something to do with hating men or claiming that all male authors are sexist. Instead, it is a rigorous analytical tool that helps us to see how literature participates in cultural ideas about gender. Many of you probably already notice the patterns, like why female characters often die at the end of novels, or why so few classic authors are women. Feminist theory gives you the language to analyze those patterns. So it's not just about reading books about women, neither it's a political, it's basically neither it's a theory of hating men. Specifically, it's a political and analytical lens which enables us to look into different paradigms and how women have been exploited throughout the history. It asks, how does literature reinforce or challenge the oppression of men? Feminist literary theory emerged basically to examine power, gender, identity, and agency in the text. So, because we are critically looking, or we are basically trying to critique the different isms in literature, so the feminism basically, it's a key insight. It says literature is never neutral. It always reflects patriarchal values. That is why, I mean, we have to go through this feminist literary theory or looking into literary theory with a feminist lens. So the core questions feminists, yeah, or feminist critics ask: how are female characters portrayed, whether active or passive, in the literature? Who gets to speak? Who is silenced? What happens to women who defy patriarchal norms? Who wrote the text? Who was excluded from the canon? And how does language itself shape gender? So feminist literary theory emerged from the women's liberation movements, historically speaking, but it quickly became a sophisticated academic discipline. Literature is never neutral, as I said earlier. Every text carries assumptions about gender. So feminist literary theory or feminist lens in literary theory, it basically tries to analyze those assumptions about gender. Our job as a feminist critic is to make those assumptions visible. So feminists, what they do, they basically try to make those assumptions visible. For example, when a novel describes a female character's appearance before her actions, that's a patriarchal choice. You might have read a few books or watched some movies where a female character is introduced primarily through her body or looks. That is what generally a cultural perspective is. Normally, when we read books or novels or any stories and watch movies or dramas, normally female character are depicted or primarily introduced through their looks and their body instead of their intellectual caliber or their literary uh, ability. So the core questions we are dealing with, or these are basically, this is the toolkit to understand uh, the feminist theory. We need to understand, or we need to try to answer these questions in order to understand our feminist literary theory. And these are the questions, as I discussed earlier. How are female characters portrayed? Who gets to speak and who gets silenced? What happens to women who defy patriarchal norms? Normally, if we, generally speaking, when we see a character in a movie or in a drama or in a novel where a woman happens to defy the patriarchal norms, normally she is considered to be an odd one, a deviant of society, and people don't, they basically people look down upon her because she's breaking the norms. So, who wrote the text? Who was excluded from the canon? And how does language itself shape gender? Uh, we use language in a way that it shapes the gender reality. So, for example, question number four: who wrote the text? We have example that led to a massive recovery project in 1970s and 80s, where publishers reissued novels by forgotten women like Zora Hurston. They basically tried to reissue the novels to publishers because of this gender tag. Uh, how language shapes our reality, for example, how language shapes itself shapes the gender reality of gender. Is think about how, for example, a chairman or mankind erases women. When we say someone is chairman, uh, it could be. I mean, there are different departments in our in our university. Often we call them chairman, and they could be female. But look at the term chairman, or look at the term mankind. It absolutely diminishes, it absolutely, erases women from this term. So feminist critics argue that language shapes thought because language has a deep impact upon shaping our thought. So if we use this kind of language, obviously we will, it will shape our thoughts, and that's how it will shape the reality for us. So the key concepts, let's move on to the next slide. The key concepts are these. Let's clarify certain key concepts in feminist literary theory. The term patriarchy, it's a social system where men hold primary power. I mean, throughout the history, if you think, if you know, if you try to look into, uh, it's been a patriarchal society, and social system was basically held by men because physically they are strong, so always the power prevails. Uh, Another thing, a very core concept in feminism is the sex versus gender. We normally, in general discussion, we mix up these two different concepts. Sex is biological, while gender is culturally constructed. We normally confuse the two terms, so we need to clarify this. Sex refers to biological traits, chromosomes, anatomy, etc., etc., our bodies. And gender is the social meaning we assign to those traits. Like, for example, we assign pink color to girls, like pink is for girls, or and then blue is for boys. Patriarchy does not mean every individual man is powerful. It means the system prioritizes masculine coded traits. The idea that women's writing might be more circular, bodily, and non-logocentric, but this has been criticized as essentialist. Why have you ever thought that why are nurses assumed to be female and pilots male in children books? Uh, Lately, it has changed a bit. Now we can see, I mean, while talking about nurses, it rings the bell. We have gone through some problems with our nursing department recently, but generally speaking, uh, when we talk about nurse or when we think about nurse, why it's always female comes to our mind, or when we talk about pilots, always there is a male character which comes into mind. It's not because it has been like that by nature. It's just because they have been depicted like that historically. So that's what patriarchy means. The canon, great books, mostly by white men. Normally, when we talk about great authors, we talk about white men or black men. It's always about men rather than, general human beings. Gendered reading, men and women may read the same text differently. It is a presumption that generally speaking that the same text read by male and female is understood differently. And the concept of écriture feminine, this is a French concept. It means woman's writing, body based, fluid, non-linear. So it's a cyclical kind of thing. Generally speaking, men uh, normally they are considered to be linear, and women at cyclical or circular. So that's how they think that the readings of both male and women, these are different. This is what feminism. This is what feminist literary theory about, or this is what literary criticism from the lens of feminism. Now, looking into the historical waves of feminism and literary criticism, uh, the first wave, late 19th and earlier 20th century, and the focus was suffering and legal rights. The first wave, we need to memorize these waves, but know the overlap. The first wave, feminist critics like Virginia Woolf were already doing sophisticated analysis. The second wave, 60s to 1960s to 80s, is where academic feminist literary theory really takes off. Cat Miller's Sexual Politics in 1970, which was published, showed how male authors like D.H. Lawrence and Norman Mailer depicted sexual domination. The second wave in 60s and 80s, the focus was social and sexual equality. Literary criticism exposes patriarchy in texts like Gynocentrism by Elaine and Kate Miller's Sexual Politics in 1970 showed how male authors like D.H. Lawrence and Norman Mailer depicted sexual domination. And the third wave, the focus of the third wave, which was from 1990s to 2000, uh, that the focus was intersectionality, individual difference, and in literary criticism, challenges universal woman, includes race, class, and sexuality. So the third wave adds race and sexuality. This is where Bell Hooks and Judith Butler, one of the very well-known uh, feminists of contemporary literature, Judith Butler, they became central. And in the fourth wave, which started from 2010 onwards, the focus was digital activism, uh, media. And if you remember, there was a movement called Me Too, which started in the United States and took over all over the Western world, and also some kind of impact on our society and Asian societies. The fourth wave, it is still happening now on social media. For example, Me Too movement led to the rereading of the Handmaid's Tale as prophecy rather than fiction. Uh, the Handmaid's Tale is basically a TV series to illustrate fourth wave of resonance. You can search it on the internet, and it's quite interesting. You can see that. Now, the key thinkers or the key theorists of feminism, or as I said earlier, in earlier 20th century, 1929, Virginia Woolf wrote A Room of One's Own. Woolf is not just a novelist, she is a brilliant critic. In A Room of One's Own, she imagines Shakespeare having a sister equally gifted. It's kind of imagination. Normally, we talk about Shakespeare a lot. So she took that example, she took that with the case of Shakespeare, and she presumed that uh, Shakespeare having a sister equally gifted. Then what happens? The Judith is forced into marriage. Judith is the Shakespeare's sister, basically. Women and women need money and private space to write. So it's not like, you know, uh, if there was a sister of Shakespeare, she would be easily recognized, and she wouldn't face any issues being one of the greatest literarian of all times. Instead, uh, she Woolf says that Judith Shakespeare, she invented a character as talented as William Shakespeare, but denied education and ends in suicide in her A Room of One's Own. Judith is forced into marriage, runs away to London to act, gets pregnant, and kills herself. So Woolf's point is genius. Genius requires material freedom. You cannot write if you are interrupted, poor, or denied education. This remains one of the most powerful arguments for why the literary canon is dominated by men. Critique male-only universities, libraries, legacy, material conditions shape literary productions. This remains one of the most powerful arguments for why literary canon is dominated by men, not because women lacked talent, but because they lacked rooms. Women lack power, women lack money and space to write, which normally is not provided to them. So Virginia Woolf basically presumes that suppose there was a sister of William Shakespeare, equally talented, she wouldn't be she wouldn't get to the status of William Shakespeare, not because she didn't have any talent, but because she was a female. Being a female, she couldn't get to the heights which where William Shakespeare went. If you guys Google search Judith Shakespeare, you will find hundreds of articles still citing Woolf, show how an idea from 1929 is still prevalent. It still is relevant. So uh, this Zoom has given me a warning that our time, because it's a free version, so it's limited time. So our time is going to end soon. But I want to carry on. So if we get disconnected, uh, you come back, log back in, and we'll carry on from this slide number 7. So this is how Virginia Woolf is. I mean, she's considered to be the pioneer of feminism in literature, especially. And this is a classic, A Room of One's Own. So she has taken her example, as I said earlier. If you Google Judith Shakespeare, you will find hundreds of articles, and they are citing Virginia Woolf, and that shows how important this idea is and how impactful her analysis are. That since 1929, still people are writing about it because it's quite groundbreaking kind of ideology. I'm sorry, I've just got stuck here. I don't know how to. Uh, we still got some few minutes left, so we can carry on. Can anyone tell me, are you still able to see the slides? Yes. Okay. So the next theorist, or the next philosopher, or rather, I would say Simone de Beauvoir. She is one of the prolific writer, and she's very influential philosopher. Uh, De Boer is basically, she wrote The Second Sex in 1949, and the famous line, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman." It's very powerful line. It's very famous line. If you reflect upon it, it says that uh, basically it means that both male and female children are born same. I mean, obviously there is a biological difference, but they are born same. But later on, one becomes man and other becomes woman. It is the society basically which has impact. Woman as other, defined in relation to man. So man normally defines woman as other, as someone, something inferior to him, because of patriarchal way of thinking, uh, according to Simone de Beauvoir. Literature often naturalizes this othering. So generally in a ordinary life, we normally consider women as other, and that is naturalized through literature. In literature, this is taken normally, and even nobody objects upon it. Why woman is considered other? So this is why it literature basically conspires, basically helps this general cultural thing to naturalize these things as othering women, considering as another species or something. The legacy is distinction between sex, biological, and gender, social construct. So the second sex is foundational for gender theory. Basically, what de Beers did, she differentiated between sex and gender. She argues that woman is always the other. She is defined as not man, just as not non-white or non-intelligent, or just as non-white is defined as non-white in colonial contexts. What is colonialism? What is post-colonialism? We are going to discuss it in our later lectures. But what colonialism has done is, as a colonialism basically considered non-white as other, that's what the word means. That similarly, uh, the patriarchy has considered women as other. Similarly, the way colonialism treat non-white people like other. So in literature, this appears in countless ways. Female characters to exist to further the male hero's journey. Normally, when we watch movies and study, we read novels, we see that women basically they are for the support of men. They are not lead. They provide kind of comfort, romance and stuff to women. So hero's journey, it's basically what female does is to further the male's hero journey. They are wives, they are mothers, or they are corpses. Rarely are they simply people. So, generally speaking, divorce says that we do not consider in literature, women are not considered simple people. They are either wives, they are mothers, they are sisters, temptresses, or corpses, not simple people like the men are in literature. When you read, ask, does this female character have her own desires and goals? Or does she exist only in relation to men? So generally, when we see these kind of movies and novels, we can see that women they don't have their own desires and goals. They are just support. They are just support, and they rescue. They are just there to further males like heroes objectives or goals. So they are in supporting character, not the main character. A female character have their own, they have their own desires and goals. No, we don't see so. Or does she exist only in relation to men? That sounds more appropriate. I mean, generally considering our literature and other things, we can see that woman is normally women exist only in relation to men as a heroine, sister, mother, or whatever. So I would like you to reflect that whether you have seen a movie where the female lead has no scene without a male character present. For example, uh, I would like to highlight a movie recently, not recently, but few years back, there was a movie called The 40-Year-Old Virgin, and that's an example. Or you can see, I mean, even the James Bond movies, you will see there is a female always, to support him, to further his goals and to comfort him, not as a lead role. So that's what the Simone de Beauvoir basically differentiated between sex and gender. By birth, two different sexes, but they are same. But when they grow up, there's a huge difference of gender. Gender is basically social construct. It's not something natural or by birth.